Hi there, welcome to this build of a Clancy Aviation Speedy Bee. Now, this has got a 40-inch wingspan and it's going to be powered by my OS FS26, one of the lovely small OS 4-strokes. And we're building it from a great set of plans that you can see behind me on the wall here, which I downloaded from the AutoZone website. Now, this is the third video in this series of this build, and in the first video we had a look at the plans and we built the nacelle. Second video we got all of the components we needed pulled together so that we can start building the wing, and that's what we're going to do in this video. Now, I've got, in that last video we did all the ribs and we did the wing tips. And you can see on the bench here, I've just laid it out very roughly, and I'm just trying to get in my mind how I'm going to set this out, because it's actually quite complicated. There's not a single spar that runs the whole length of the wing. They're in sections with the lap joints. There's a little bit of a kick on the wing tips at the ends, and yet the top of the wing is absolutely flat. And that is really essential that we get that right. So I'm just laying it out here, as I said, to try and get my head around how it's going to work. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the plans laid out and get this set up onto top of the plans, and we'll have a look at that and I'll tell you how we're going to set this out and get it done. Right, well, I'm just starting to set this out now, and I've got my plans nice and flat on the board, and I've got some plastic on top to protect the plans. Now, what I'm doing is I'm actually pinning into my cutting mats because I don't have anything else big enough. And these are good quality steel pins with glass heads, and if we just tap them lightly, they hold really well. So that is good. Now, I've got the wing tips where they need to be roughly, got the leading edge which is made of two pieces of hard 1/4 inch square balsa stuck together with aliphatic resin, and I've got the trailing edge which is a 1/4 inch piece of hard balsa. Now, the wing tip, I've pinned it at the tips here, or the inside edges, and that is exactly where it butts up against this rib W3. Now, to set the height of this, because the wingtips are just lifted up a little bit, we've got a spacer which is T1, comes with the plans, which actually from eyeing it up looks pretty accurate, and I've used that to set the height and then just rested the wingtip on a steel bar either end. This one I haven't done properly yet, but this one is set up properly. So that's set at the right angle, it's pinned in place. We've then got this leading edge, which you can see there's a cut in the end, or both ends, at the right distance. Takes a little bit of doing to get it right, but then that will just take into account the angle of the wingtip, and that just sits there, and we're going to pin that into place in a minute. Once we've got that pinned into place, we will pin the trailing edge into place, and we're going to use the ribs, which are all exactly the same length, just to make sure that that's a nice snug fit. So the last thing we want to do is fit the trailing and leading edge and then find the ribs are a little bit too small for that gap, or too big. So we're going to use the ribs as a spacer. So we've got those pinned, and we'll also pin and set this wing. Now, with the instructions that come with the plans that you download off AutoZone, at this point they would say to glue these joints. Well, I'm not going to glue these joints, I'm just going to pin them. And the reason being is I want to, once I've got these pinned, I want to set all the ribs, I want to do the central spars, and then I want to eye across and make sure that these wingtips are at the same, are at the correct height to give us that lovely flat top to the wing. If we glue them now, then it limits our ability to lift it up just a fraction or down just a fraction at the wingtip to get that flat surface. So that's why I'm leaving it. So I think that is where we are at the moment. So I'm going to get that done, get the spars pinned down and the wingtips pinned down, and then I'm going to get all of these ribs in and start to get the spars in, and we'll come back and have a look once I've got that in before I start gluing it. Right, now I've got this all set out now with the ribs in the right place and the spars all in place, and this has taken me about, I don't know, over 3 hours to get this to this stage. There's these spars, you can see all the joints here that have needed to be set up. We've had to cut in angles on all these ends, so it's been a real task setting it out, but I think we are there now and ready to start gluing. Up to this point I haven't put a drop of glue on it, and I've been using my meter ruler to check that everything is not only flat along the top here like we needed, but also that all these spars are in a dead straight line, which is really good and just what we need. The last thing we want is our spars to have curves in them, which I think, to be honest, would be quite easy to introduce a bend at these joints if we're not careful. So I've just been checking and checking as I go, and I will check everything again before I glue each individual joint, and I'll check that all the ribs are square and in the right place. One of the things that's kind of complicated this is the fact that in some areas, like on the top here, there is cap strips, and also on the bottom we've got cap strips, and so we've had to sit these ribs on pieces of balsa to simulate the cap strips, and the same here, just to make sure it's the right height. And you'll have seen me just putting a pencil line on there. I just put those ribs in. What I've done is, where I know there's balsa going to go on top, which is here, 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 and those two, I've been drawing on in pencil, because I don't want to be thinking, oh, that spar's not going down enough, because you know, you can feel it proud, and then cut it out, push it down, and then find out actually it should have been proud because there's a cap strip going to go on there. So that's just right there now for the cap strip, and this is nice and flush because there's no cap strips or anything. So this is all nice, and I really enjoyed setting this out, and I'm going to start gluing it now, gluing all these joints. But the one thing I have still got to do is the ailerons, the spars underneath that need to be cracked and fitted in for this profile, and also the spars that need to go along the top here. Now I'm going to glue it first and then I'll work on this. And we've got these ribs W5, which are the end of the ailerons, that will need to slot in there with a spacer between the rib and the aileron to give a little bit of clearance, and we'll need to get these spars in. But like I say, I'm going to do that once I've got the main portion of the wing finished. I'll do it before I unpin the wing from the board, but I just wanted to get everything else square first, and some of these joints glued, so I could remove some of the bits of supporting balsa. So I think we are ready to glue this now, and it's really exciting to see how this has taken shape. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention is that these two central ribs will need to be spaced for that fitting of the nacelle. So what I'm going to do is I will set it up so that it's the right width at the back here, just where these main spars are, but I'm not going to glue these front ones just yet. I will actually allow those so I can move them in a little bit or out a bit, and I will fit this a little bit later when I've cut out this spar, because this spar here needs to be removed as shown on the plans. So and there's also a little bit of cutting out on here, so I'll fit that later, but as long as I've got the back of these glued and just leaving those joints clear. Right, well, I've really been cracking on with this now, and I've got this all glued, all of the spars, the lap joints, and I've got some gussets in at the back here, and we've got some gussets at the front here on these two W2 ribs. I've glued the two ribs here for the right distance for that pod to fit in. I've still got these ribs loose at the front here, and I need to fit that, and that will be at a later stage. And I'm just doing the aileron on this side, and I thought I'd just show you what I've done, because it's a little bit fiddly and I'm concerned I'm going to glue everything together and cause a problem if I'm not careful. So I'll just move the camera around onto this aileron so we can see it. Right, well, the aileron is this portion here of the wing, and we're constructing it in the wing now, and then we're going to cut the ribs and take it out. Now we've got this rib which is the end of the aileron here, which is W5, and I've glued that to the trailing edge, and I've got a spacer in there just to keep it off this rib, and which is W2, and to create a space there so we've got enough movement, enough clearance when it's moving. And I've cut a spar which is going to go in here. Now what I've done is I've just widened these slots here for this spar so that there's a little bit of a gap between this spar, which will become the front of the aileron, and this spar, which is the rear of the wing, so the aileron bay, I suppose, the rear of the aileron bay. And I'm worried that if I glue these, I'm going to end up getting glue between these two spars and make it more difficult to cut out, because once I've got this glued, I'm going to take it off the board and turn it over, and I will then be adding the other spars, and once I've done that I need to cut through and cut it out. And what I'm going to do is I've made these slots a little bit bigger, as I said, and I've got these old scalpel blades, and I'm just placing those in there like that, and I'm just going to use those as spacers. I mean, at the end of the day we could use razor blades, we could use whatever we like. I would rather not use balsa, because I think that is going to, if the glue does wick along and stick, it'll be harder to separate, but it'll be easier with these blades, hopefully. And I've also got this gusset to be trimmed. Right, well, I've now got that glued, and you can see hopefully that I've maintained a gap between those two spars, which we're going to need when the thing's operating anyway. So if we have them butted up close, we're going to end up sanding some off, so better to put that gap in now, and it's only a tiny gap. And the blades, I actually, where the ribs are, I just put a couple down as well like that, just to maintain the gap and stop any CA flow. And I've also put this gusset in. So this is finished now on the top, and we just need to do the underside. But I'm going to get on and do the other rib, the other aileron now. Right, well, I've now got this all glued. I've got the ailerons finished, or at least the top surface, and the gussets in, and it's ready to come off the board. And you've got to admit, this is always one of the most exciting parts of a build, or it is for me anyway, is actually taking the wing off the board and holding it and seeing what it looks like. So I'm going to get this off the board now, and I've just got a couple of pins to pull out, and I've been quite lucky with the pins, because they were, as I said earlier, they were glass topped pins, and I've only broken two by just tapping them in, but I did tap them in very gently. So let's just remove these last few pins, and we've still got the cap strips to go on here, but other than that, and if I get my ruler just to separate it from where it's stuck down with the CA. I've been enthusiastic with the CA. It's coming up. If you just put the ruler under and just give it a little bit of a twist, that seems to separate it quite well. Like I said, I find this part of the build really exciting, and just seeing what it looks like when you get it off and holding that wing for the first time. There we go. Oh, that's nice. That is really nice and lovely and flat. Straight edge on the, yeah. Oh, that's really good, and there's no weight to it. I mean, there shouldn't be, because it's just sticked up. I've still got some shear webbing which I need to put in the front. I might do that first before I start fiddling with the underside, doing these ailerons. But if I just turn this round, you can see here where there's the slots in the ribs for those spars for the ailerons. So I'm going to get on and start to do that now. But like I said, I'm going to get that shear webbing in first, just give it a little bit more strength. But to be honest, it feels pretty good. It doesn't feel a flimsy wing, even though there's very little to it. You'll have noticed I haven't, just one other thing, I haven't put any of the balsa in the middle here. There's supposed to be a tray that goes in to sit the pilot on. There's supposed to be a servo tray. I'm leaving all that until a fairly late stage where I know what I'm doing. I know where the servos are going. I know how high the pilot wants to be. I don't want to be putting those pieces of balsa in and then having to relocate them and cut them. So I'm leaving all that. And I've still, I keep saying this, still got these ribs loose at the front here, just these two, because I need to just get that pod fitting in properly, that nacelle. Okay, I'll stop talking now and I will get on with doing this. Right, and I've now got the main structure of the wing finished, and I am really pleased with how this build's gone, and I've really enjoyed it, even though it's quite complicated with all these lap joints and various bits, and and building in the ailerons. You can see I've got the spars in here for the ailerons on the underside of the wing on either side. Haven't cut them out yet. I'll be doing that in the next in the next video, I think, when I come to fit the servos, and I'll mention that in a minute. Also got the shear webbing in. I think on the plans it shows just shear webbing either on the front or the back of these two bays here, but I've kind of got carried away, as you do, and I've put shear webbing on the front and back of these two and these two bays, and it's added quite a lot of rigidity, you can see, and it's only 1/16 balsa, so it's really thin, and I've added these little gussets here as well, there and there, and I'll probably add some more there and another one there, and again 1/16 balsa. So adding those extra little bits, as long as you don't go crazy, it makes very little difference to the weight, but it does add to the rigidity and resilience of the wing. So I think it's well worth doing. I think shear webbing is always worth doing in my mind. I've got a lot of the cap strips on now, so as I say, this wing now is finished, and I am really excited to have got it done. Now, I mentioned the ailerons earlier and not having cut those out, and the reason I haven't done that is because I'm going to, well, on the plans it shows the ailerons are controlled by bell cranks with a central servo, and I'm going to do away with that, and I'm going to have a single independent servo in each wingtip. and that's going to operate the aileron. And I want to get those set up first before I cut out these ailerons. I've got a plywood, I think, control horn or aileron horn that will go on here. Still got the cap strip to put on top of that. But all that is going to be the focus of the next video. So I'm quite looking forward to that and getting that set up, and it'd be really nice to get these ailerons cut out. But as I said, the next video is going to deal with that. So I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I hope you found it useful, I hope you found it interesting, and please come back and see how we get on in setting up the aileron servos and indeed cutting the ailerons out of the wing. And it's going to need a little bit of cleaning up once we've done that. So anyway, thanks very much for watching.